Good morning, everybody. That was really amplified. Welcome to the to ApplyTexas Advisory Committee meeting on February 13th, 2013, here at the historic Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And welcome. We have some visitors. We have some substitutes today. And so as we get started, I'd like to do introductions around the room and welcome new members and substitutes who are with us today. And I'll start. My name is Ethan Logan from Texas Tech University.
And I'm Megan Wheeler from Angelo State University.
Trey Hadaway, Kilgore College.
Tim Brace from ApplyTexas.
Michael Heinze, Texas State University.
Beck Rajput, Tarrant County College.
Good morning, y'all. Ray Brown from Texas Christian University.
Matt Hebard, South Texas College.
Albert Salinas, Laredo Community College.
Mary Gooch, Prairie View A&M University.
Jeannie Rickey, Texas Women's University.
Bethany Bell, Austin Community College, on behalf of Linda Kluke.
Kevin Davis from Stephen F. Austin State University. I believe I'm a permanent now.
Cheryl Moon from Texas A&M University at Galveston.
Rita Wilson with Amarillo College.
Bilal Janice from Brownsville Independent School.
Andrew Lofters with the Coordinating Board.
Jeremy Thomas with Angelina College.
Jose Rios with the Coordinating Board.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here today. Welcome to Ray, our newest member of our board, and to Kevin. I will try not to call you Monique as I look at your nameplate there. And welcome. And thank you for being here for ACC. And I think that's it. We have a few people who are absent today. I know that Cheryl Rich was under the weather, so our thoughts go off to her as she's battling a virus, I believe, and fever. So I think that everybody else, I hope, is in good health and good form. So welcome. We'll start the meeting today with the approval of the minutes. I'll give you a moment and entertain any additions or corrections to the minutes.
Ethan, I am having a hard time logging onto my computer from here, so don't have the minutes in front of me. And I didn't have a content question. I was wondering whether my name might be misspelled, and I wanted to bring that up. Is it B-R-A-C-E? Does anybody can see it? If it should be B-R-A-C-E, and I don't remember whether it was this one or the previous one that had I. I'd just like to have that corrected. If that's the case, I don't see them in front of me, so.
I have Brace.
Is it Brace?
I have Brace on mine.
Okay,
but
thanks.
I'll look through the rest of the document. If I do see any misspellings, I'll correct it.
Thanks.
Wrong too. It's G-O-O-C-H, not G-O.
Now, see, y'all had the opportunity to blame it on somebody else if something wasn't right. You know, you just say, hey, that wasn't me. That's somebody else that showed up.
Any other corrections for the minutes?
I must have, is it February 12th? Is it today?
Today.
Okay. I'm just looking at the minutes. I didn't grab them, so. It says here that I'm absent for a 2-year institution, and I've been to every meeting that I can think of.
Thank you, Rita.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second.
Approved and seconded. We accept the minutes as they are corrected. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you. Our first item for consideration is a consideration of adding an early college high school question.
This question came from the field. It's also a good question to have for data analysis for the coordinating board. So if y'all have any questions.
I'll say I know in our district, we already have an early college high school, and 3 of our other high schools are going to have an early college high school embedded in the high school. So, and we're moving towards every single one. So I think that's probably a trend maybe in the state, so it would be important to have it.
What specifically is the question? To add a question to say, I'm in an early college high school or identifier? Or what?
Yeah.
Okay. We have quite a number of schools, and we use the ApplyTexas. So it was a concern from the field that how do we identify these students?
I think the field wanted to make sure that for the data analysis, it's just to make sure that we know where people are applying from, like what school, without looking at the name of the high school. Because sometimes you do have integrated early college high school within the same high school, so you don't know whether a student is considered early college high school.
Right.
The question is going to be a yes or no question with a default of no. So a student has to say yes or something,
Okay.
change the answer to yes.
Okay. In our experience, they qualify for admissions to community college under dual enrollment. So they are a dual student for state reporting purposes. However, if the state wants to identify those students, then I don't know how accurate that piece of information, if you just have a question, you don't know if that's going to be answered correctly all the time.
Well, and Matt, I think you're absolutely right. Well, I was sitting here thinking, well, I'm a high school student and I'm starting college classes early, so I'm early college. I mean, we're assuming that 17, 18-year-old understands our terminology, which seems pretty straightforward, but I think your data is going to be skewed. I don't think you're going to get the answer you're looking for.
What we've been doing is working with the ISDs to identify those students. And in our system, we actually have them as a cohort tag, and just so that we know that the data is accurate. So if the state's interested in that, I mean, with the sharing of information, that may be even a better way to do it, because our early college high schools know who's in the early college high school, and sometimes we don't even always know who at the front end, because if they start in early college as freshmen, and then they're going to take college credit in the 11th and 12th grade. So we kind of had this discussion locally about how do we make sure we know who those students are, and we actually have them apply, in their sophomore year. So we could add a question. I don't think that's a hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. Is that going to, give us what we want? I'm not sure. It seems to be a data sharing between the ISDs and the colleges, like similar to the Pathway Project and the CBM reports that we do. So.
Jose, is it a question that wants to clarify a lot of the students when they go to do the ApplyTexas? Am I a first-time attended college because they assume that because they're in dual enrollment, they're already in college, but they're really still in high school? Is that also wanting to clarify that, perhaps?
No, not on that one, no.
For us, the key is just working direct with the ISD to know who's in the early college high school, and we put a cohort tag in our system in order to separate them from our we have dual enrollment engineering academies, we have dual enrollment regular students. So
how do other institutions handle this?
Well, SFA uses a paper app for early college high school, so it's separate than the ApplyTexas app. But we're actually looking at, hopefully creating one for ApplyTexas so that our information can automatically feed. But right now, we're using a paper app. So we were hoping that, we could get something to use for them so that we could get the information directly in the banner instead of having to hand put each person.
No, yeah, that's good.
Austin Community College uses the same. We tag them. They do the Austin Community College application, and they're tagged in colleague or datatel with particular coding, and that's how we know that they're part of the early high school.
Same thing at Tarrant County College. We have an admit type. This is early high school students. That's how we can track them and report them.
We do the same at TWU, with the exception of we also try to capture it with a custom question, and our data is so skewed with that question. But it's just like there's no way we can define it to where they understand it.
What about for students that graduate high school, after they graduate high school? Yeah, after they graduate high school, like...
That were prior dual
Yeah.
or early college, high school, the question yesterday, yeah.
So if a student graduates high school and from one of those schools, they're not doing the, they're not participating in that program, like the dual credit or early college high school, where they take courses at the community college. Is that the same process that you do? You just tell them to do a paper app?
They don't have to do another application. Once they've already applied to the college, they are a student. What we do is change the coding, their admitted status from early college high school to a traditional student. So when our Institution of Effectiveness runs the reports, they just match the original admitted status to the current traditional status that we change it to.
Same process at TCC. We end their early high school program when they graduate, and then following fall semester when they apply.
They do have to apply to TWU again. We really don't consider them as having that campus experience, et cetera, so they would truly be coming in as freshmen.
They have to reapply at SFA too.
I was going to say, technically, they're freshmen anyway.
Right.
First time, because they've clarified that. We don't count that prior to high school graduation. However, we have started, once we've finished our reporting for that last term, which is spring usually, we go ahead en masse and change all their classifications in our system. And then they get generated a letter saying, hey, don't apply again. We've already got it in the system.
The students that are in early college high school are going to take dual enrollment because that's by virtue how they get their associates. But then there are the other students that are taking dual enrollment, not necessarily in the early college high school, because that's going to happen, say, at Hannah High School. So to use that as an example, so yeah, it's kind of hard, to tell. But I believe that question would help maybe, I don't know, the four-year institutions that don't have the time to, to collaborate with or they have so many ISD within. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it sounds like the field already have processes internally, locally to identify them, and maybe we need to just look at creating something standard, like an application later on. But
and this kind of goes back, Jose, to what we were attempting to do yesterday, which was take away their ability to choose, hey, I'm dual credit. We'll figure that out on our own on the back end. So I think we need to figure out something similar to do here rather than trusting a data from a teenager. I've just seen how much we have to spend time cleaning up the data already. I just don't want to add a complexity to it.
Very good discussion. I would entertain either a motion to move on this item or to table this item.
Can I just ask, do we know what the question might ask or what the specific question might be?
I think right now it would be just self-identifying a self-identifying question that says, are you an early college high school graduate?
Oh, so you're just looking for graduate, not somebody who's
in the
coming
program? No.
Okay. To me, that's a totally different issue.
Yeah.
For clarification, this would be self-identification on the application to college post-high school.
Yeah, post-high school.
And so and that's a very good point, whether or not it was a question about admission to college within the early college system as a high school student or post-high school graduation and or associate's degree from early college high school identification. Is that correct? Does that sound like?
Yeah, it's post-high school.
Hard for one question. I mean, me, I would really to say to the high school student, you might could do it in two, but I mean.
And Jeannie, I was going to ask you, you said you already have a supplemental question that does something like this. Which way is your question going?
I guess I'm a little lost. You know how slow I am, you guys. So let's back up. What's the goal of this question again?
Is to figure out how many early college or where the early high school graduates
Are going after they complete
But
the
I mean,
program.
it's not really going to have that. We're not going to have that data, because if a student stays within the community college, unless they transfer to a 4-year, they're not going to apply again to some of the institutions. So it's not
right.
The outcome is not the same as we talk about how institutions are doing, are working with this population.
Mine would never give you that.
Yeah.
That's my mind was somewhere totally different. Sorry. I'll join the meeting now.
That's okay. I was with you.
I think that the question then becomes, it's very challenging, and I think Jeremy touched on it, to make sure that we're getting that question answered correctly. It's hard enough for us to know if it's an institution as an early college high school and not just a dual credit program, because unless the student is coming in with the associate's degree, because there are some who come in with come in with 36 hours, but that will be the challenge, and it may be that it's going to be incumbent upon us in terms of our coding for our admission of these students to be able to make that into reports coordinating board to help facilitate that, and that may be better data than self-identification.
Well, my question would be, and because I'm trying to think of the application as it stands right now, do we, as a student trying to enter early college high school, are we admitting on that basis? Are we having students fill out the ApplyTexas application to become an early high school college student?
That's a good question.
Not at the moment.
Okay, if you did that, wouldn't they be trackable in the future when they go back and fill out the application to move forward?
Well, Trey, I think that's getting back to the original, what we thought we were talking about the first time, which was, do we ask them the question up front, are you early college? And then you have to assume the data you're getting from that is correct. I think with us having agreements with our high schools, it's better for us to code those on the back end than attempting to let the students code that for us, and we just need to know how to report it. If that information is trying to be collected, that's just one little field, and what we could probably do en masse when I run a report. So it just, again, do we want to trust a young kid to know what they are?
And I think that true early college high school students are going to know that they are early college high school students, but I think that other students might also think they are early college because it's not a very descriptive title. So if we were going to put a question in there, we'd have to really make sure that we're weeding out the people who are truly not in early college high school programs, I think.
So we're back on the conversation I had the first time, and we do both. Okay, so for ours that come in that truly do dual credit, like through us, with us, however we'd like to say it, we code that on the back end. And then we have the question out there to try to capture the students who have done it somewhere else that we won't know about, and that's where we get all the bad data. So.
Table
I actually move that we don't do this. Don't add a question for early college at this time until we can either figure out a better way to word it or a way to code it on the back end.
Second. Okay, the motion is to not consider the early college high school question as an addition to the application, the current or the next incarnation of the application. So that is the motion on the table. There's been sufficient discussion. Any other discussion warranted on that negative, affirmative question that we're asking? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, our next item on our agenda is a report from the technical team. Dr. Brace.
Yes, hello. I'll just kind of take these in order, and if y'all want to discuss them, we'll discuss as we go along. So, uploading documents. Our current infrastructure does not allow for uploading of documents, and if you're talking about what I think of as uploading documents would be, say, a PDF document or a Word document. Those can't be sent through EDI, which is how we deliver ApplyTexas. So I'm still in the early stages of research. What we would need to do would be to secure some sort of repository. It's certainly doable. Uploading documents is actually quite simple. We do it it's done at the University of Texas, I know, in the Office of Admissions and a lot of other places. It's what happens after the document gets uploaded that is trickier as to where is it going to be, who's going to be able to see it. So what I would like to do in terms of moving forward, I'll continue to work with, I'm right now inquiring at the university because because ApplyTexas is written there and they have a repository for uploading documents as to what it would take to make that robust enough to handle the number of documents that we might get. And so the question, I guess, to the committee is what type of, and to the community is what type of documents are we talking about? In a perfect world, if you could upload everything you want, what would it include? And then if we wanted to move forward with choosing one or something as a pilot to flesh out what that would look like, I can move forward on that. It's certainly going to increase costs considerably. What the definition of considerably, I don't know at this point, but one of that's certainly a source of some of the increased costs on other applications around there that have this capability. So it would be something that y'all would need to consider. So what, I guess, I don't know whether you want to talk about it now or whether you want to assign someone to a subcommittee or to look into or to poll the community, or do you know enough off the top of your heads as to what you would upload if you were able to? Upload in this case, in my mind, would mean that there would be a link on the application to upload a document rather than type in some things, or to provide some sort of document that you might want downstream on your end. And then it would live somewhere, which neither you nor the student would need to care about, but whoever looked at it would have access to that repository, and there would be a link or an inbox or something for people at your school or for your administrators to go, and you would view that document. You could download it if you wanted to. That's the model that's generally out there. We could also figure out a way to deliver those documents to your repository if you have one. But generally speaking, when these places have uploaded documents, they just have a central repository that it lives, and then everyone comes and looks at it there. But of course, that means having a repository, building the infrastructure, having IT staff that maintain the repository, and this kind of thing. So I guess the first step would be, what would you like to upload?
Jeremy, yesterday we talked about the affidavit, the House bill affidavit. I know that our institution doesn't have any documentation. Are you currently doing that now? I mean, you said that they were able to access the affidavit through ApplyTexas.
It's a PDF that is a download to them. It's not an upload back to us.
Oh, I see.
Because it has to be notarized.
So how would we be able to do that? Because that's the main thing, is the affidavit.
For community colleges, that would probably be just about the only use we would have for
it,
would be that document.
That's what I was thinking.
What is that again? That's the affidavit that they download. There's a link already there, and they download it.
PDF.
That elusive question we had a hard time finding yesterday, that one.
Keep looking for it. So that would be what I would recommend for 2 year. And as far as the notary, I don't know how that's going to work.
We would also have supporting documentation, like sometimes a student changes his social, so copy of that. That would be nice to be done remotely, especially when a lot of schools do 1098-Ts online, and other supporting documentation, like when there's a name change, that'll come through, marriage license, divorce decree,
Hey, Matt, do you do that at the point of the application,
Well,
or do you
that's what I
have
was
another
thinking.
procedure in place for
I
that?
have another procedure, but they can do it at the point, because we have them reapplying a lot, and there's information that
see.
are changing.
So if you're doing a name change, you just have them do another application in order to get it in the
That's
system?
if they're a current student, but we get it in sometimes when they're applying, or if they're updating information, or if it's a name change or something. It's not a big deal. That's other types of things that we would get in at the time. Would we like it? I guess, but I don't think I would recommend that it's filtered off to a subcommittee, like you said, and to look at the feasibility of it, if it's needed or not.
I think fee waivers would be great.
I think there's a variety of different items that could be delivered in such a manner, which we just mentioned a very good variety just now. And so I would like to refer this to the technology subcommittee for further conversation, since we have multiple avenues of approaching this request, and whether or not we needed to have a central depository, if we just needed to have a pass-through to other institutions. And then there's some more implications that are involved with that in terms of increased financial commitment, in terms of if we do a central depository and personnel to support that.
Well,
so
Ethan,
it's a little bit of a larger question.
And Ethan, my concern is that some institutions are going to use this to an extreme.
Right.
And then there's those of us who will use it just very little or none at all. But the cost will be spread out amongst all of us. If we're going to do something like this, it seems like we would want to do something that was more of a pass-through, or something they had to download within a time limit, or it goes away. Right. So that we're not storing these documents forever. Some people will just basically let it become a filing cabinet, and we don't want that to occur, because the cost will start outweighing, because PDFs, depending on how they scan them, can be large.
So refer that to the technology subcommittee if you are on that committee, or if you're not and you would like to be, you're always welcome to participate, or please talk to somebody about any other further considerations.
And I certainly, would like to be involved with that, since I, in my other hat in the Office of Admissions at UT, I deal with uploaded documents quite a bit.
Thank you, Tim.
Moving to address software, we are planning on in the installation of an address cleaning software for this next cycle. We will be using, we want to use a product called Finalist, which is used by the University of Texas at Austin, and we can use it, I believe, at no extra cost. And it is just a standard. There are many products out there, and they all pretty much do the same thing, as far as I can tell. They all plug into the federal database. We might, depending on how much we use it, I said it's at no cost. We might, if we bring down the UT server, they might come knocking on my door and say, you need to help us make this infrastructure a little more robust because you're using it a lot, and that would make sense. But it's certainly not going to cost lots and lots of money. If we went somewhere else with another product, it could cost tens of thousands of dollars each year just for that. I think we'll be able to avoid that. What we need is some help, and Cheryl Rich is going to be involved in this, and maybe looking for help from, especially, it would be nice to have a representation from this two-year school as well. Had Cheryl not fallen ill, she was going to meet with some members of my team today or yesterday and begin the discussion of implementation. And implementation in this sense means, where are we going to put, y'all have been on the web. You know that there's a half a dozen ways that you've been asked about address cleaning. At UT Austin, there's a page for changing addresses, and it simply has a little box that says clean it or don't clean it, and then you're kind of done. There's others, I know I've been on the web, where you put in your address and it comes back and says, here's a cleaned version, is that okay? So there are various ways to actually effect it, but our plan is to put it in, and I don't think no matter which way we decide, I don't think it's going to hold up our ability to install it for this year. The questions that we would like help from, and again, this could either be someone kind of vetted by this committee to lead in that effort and just communicate back to the committee, or a subcommittee to deal with it, would be, where is it going to be? What's the experience going to be for the student? Do you want them to be able to say no? Do you want them to know how you cleaned it if you did? The initial kind of run through on our end would be to put it on the profile, because that's going to be, that makes the most sense. And then because the profile gets proliferated then to all the apps, and currently we allow them to change they're allowed to change the address on the app. So if we continue that, it would be like they could clean it on the profile. It would be cleaned onto the app, but they would have the capability of changing it for an app if they wanted to. And I know that on the 2-year schools especially, and this will bring back county, by the way. So we will have the county. And then one of the implementation question is, do you want to allow the student to change that if they think it's a different county? So these kinds of, they're important questions, but we're into the details of how we actually handle the transaction, which need to be answered before we actually were able to install it, but they're just part of everyday software development. And the good news is we don't see anything happening to stop us from being able to deliver that starting August 1st. Are there any questions about that? And I think, again, my request is that there be someone, since this will be our last meeting, for the cycle, is there someone that could help us? Cheryl Rich has already stepped forward, and she's already in communication with some of our team, and our team members specifically asked that we also have someone from representing a 2-year school. It could be just the two of them if this committee agreed that was it, or you could put together a larger group. That would be fine. However you want to deal with the communication of implementation.
I would like to volunteer myself, because when I first got back, that was the first thing I asked was the clean address. It's a big issue with my staff in admission, so I would like to be a part of that. And I'm glad you said the county code is coming back, because that was a big report issue for us also.
Tim, can I ask the question, is it a big deal? How big of a deal will it be if we have it cleaning on both sides? If they change it within the application, to have it re-verify at that point?
I don't know that that's a big deal, but you mean re-verified as in it would change it again? I mean, if they changed it, it would just change it back to what they changed it from, right? Because it's probably only one version of a clean address.
Well, I was just thinking students moved, and so they instead of going back to their profile and starting there, they go to the app first. And then we'd end up with another bad address, or possibly could end up with another bad address. I had a good example in an email today where they left out the street number and emailed me asking, why didn't I get my acceptance letter? Well, you didn't give us all the information. And Clean Address would have picked that up.
Yeah. That's certainly something that the implementation could talk. I don't know. I can't think of a reason why you couldn't redo it. And again, for implementation, then what do you do? Do you tell them you did it? Do you give them a choice? What do you want them to do at that point? And if you're going to do that, do you really want to still do it on the profile? It's like how many places do you want to do it? I'm not saying you shouldn't, but that's what for y'all to decide. And I think it'll be something that we'll probably be talking about again next year as to how well it worked and what changes you might want. But I think that with Rita and Cheryl and anybody else who wants to get involved, there's various ways to do it, but they all work. It's just a matter of once we get it implemented and installed, someone might go, well, it might be better if we did it this other way instead. And it's just a matter of implementation. I will say, and this is kind of part of the discussion, it's part of a different discussion a little bit, but I want to bring it up again because otherwise I might forget. Apartment as a separate field doesn't work with the address cleaning. And so I know that this group has talked a little bit about, and it's a little inconsistent. It's kind of our fault because in the emergency contact you're asked for an apartment. There's a field called apartment. And on the regular address, there's just 2 address lines. And there's been discussion back and forth as to which way to go. And and our suggestion would be to take the apartment field out of the emergency contact and not use it, and just use 2 address lines. If we went the other way and added apartment to the regular address, which has been discussed, then we're going to have to finagle that behind the scenes, because there's not a separate apartment line for the address cleaning. It won't work. That's kind of an aside we might come back to later, but that would be a suggestion, I guess, that we would make for a change in the app, would be to take that apartment field, which is already off of all the addresses, I think, in the app, except for the emergency contact, and just take it off of there too. And we maybe could add some text or something to say, if you have an apartment, whatever. I think I've seen that on the web too, where it'll kind of suggest to put the apartment in the second line. Okay, so Rita, I'll just make sure that I have your email sometime. Any other further questions about that?
When the change is made, we're all going to be notified, or?
Yeah, it should be part of the rollout. We could talk about piloting, but I don't know that that's. We'll come back and talk about that if we think there's going to be a problem. But we should be able to test it. We might even be able to put it in before the first, pilot it, on some of the schools that still have something open late in the fall. But yeah, it would be part of the rollout of all the new cycle stuff, which will come in August. And when is that announced? Like in June, or I think June. I think we put up a list of all the changes for the cycle.
I guess what I would be most interested in knowing once that came out was whether it ended up being on the profile or whether it ended up being on the app.
Yeah.
I think that would be a
okay
interesting thing to know.
Yeah, I think our default position after thinking through it as far as we have now would have put it on the profile, and then put it on the app, and then it would propagate to the app, and then it's just a matter of do we add another check if they change it on the app? Do we add another check there? That's a good point about whether, or do you make them go back and change their profile if they've changed addresses? I don't know that they would want to. Do people deliberately put different addresses on different apps?
Well, there's a residency app.
Mailing address and yeah, physical or something, whatever it says. Yeah. Okay. All right. Y'all help me a little bit about this audit capability for phone numbers. I know that we don't allow. It simply asks for numbers right now, and I don't remember the details of. We have audit capability. It doesn't. It will throw an error if you try to put in non-numbers. And it simply says out to the side numbers only. But I don't know whether you want to allow certain things, or there was talk about dividing the phone number up, which is fine, except that you run into the problem of international phone numbers that don't divide up the same way we divide them up. But I don't remember exactly what was driving this question about auditing phone numbers. Do you all remember that?
I think at the time you didn't know whether it was permitted dashes or.
Yeah, I think it's not. I think
Okay.
it's just numbers. That's I'll double check on that. But if it's not the case, we'll make it the case, because that's what the note implies.
Mm-hmm.
Numbers only. So what we probably should do is do a test where we're putting in all kinds of other periods and dashes and ampersands and whatever, and making sure that it throws an error on all that. But right now it's just saying, yeah, don't put anything but numbers. So we'll double check on that and make sure.
In fact, on the regular phone number for if it's a state of Texas student or whatever, or United States student, there's only enough characters in there for the phone number itself. It doesn't give enough room for an international phone number.
The relationship between the scholarship app and the regular app is an interesting discussion, and I wasn't here when decisions were made about how those things are linked, but I wanted to provide some clarification and address questions, and if you want to discuss how those are linked, I think only have about 20 or a little over 20 schools that use the scholarship app, and the scholarship app cannot be started until one starts a regular ApplyTexas app. So if you have a scholarship app, and if you set up a scholarship app as an administrator, and if it's open, then once you start an ApplyTexas app, you can start a scholarship app. If at the time of submission of the regular app, if the scholarship app is ready to be submitted, that is, it will pass all the audits. There's a document, there's something that comes up that says, as part of the certification page, that will say, you know, the intent is to tell you that you're submitting the scholarship app too, and that if you don't want to, you need to take some action that will not submit it at the same time. If it is not ready, then on the certification page, there's text that says, you need to go finish your scholarship app. And you can choose to submit the regular app without the scholarship app. And then once the regular app is submitted, you can still go back in and open up your scholarship app as long as the deadline hasn't passed, and open it and submit it separately. So there has always been significant linkage between the two. There has been some miscommunication from ApplyTexas or some confusion on the part of the community as to how they're linked. And I think we could probably do a better job of making that clear in FAQs, and we certainly would be willing to take a look at the certification text and make sure that it's really clear. I think that sometimes we have students who submitted the scholarship app and didn't mean to, because it passed the audits, but we have no way of knowing whether you're done. You know, so the default has always been that it will submit with it. Now, there has been discussion in the past, well, that's a bad idea. You should make them submit it separately. But then they forget to submit it because they think that it went together. They probably think it went together because it looks like one app. When you're in the app, it's just a different link on the nav bar over on the left-hand side. They probably don't think of it as a separate app. It's just another link. So I can see that there's some confusion, and if we're going to maintain the current linkage, we probably could make it clearer with text and FAQs, and maybe clearer in the certification itself as to what actually is happening. I don't know how big the problem is. We do hear from students who we hear because they do go together. If they're ready, we probably hear more from students who were like, I wasn't ready to submit my scholarship if I hadn't finished that essay or whatever. But maybe it wasn't a required essay, and so when we did the audits, it said, is it ready to go? Is the whole thing ready to go together? Yes, then we send it. We do tell them that that's what they're doing, but maybe they don't read it, or maybe the text isn't as clear as it could be.
Tim, can I ask you some questions about that? So tell me again how many schools actually use it?
I'm guessing about 20.
In the entire state? So I don't know a lot of history on ApplyTexas, but ApplyTexas is kind of homegrown, am I correct? The application itself?
Yeah, we write it, yeah.
Okay, so the scholarship program is exactly the same? You all created it?
Yes.
So has an assessment ever been done why all the schools don't use it?
No, and I don't think no assessment has ever been done. It's been a question in my mind since I got involved with ApplyTexas is why don't more people use the scholarship app?
I guess my question is, why are we spending so much time and resource on an item that less than 20 schools use? Maybe there's something that could be done, an assessment put out to the community to see why it's not used, and maybe we could improve it so more people would jump on board with it, or maybe it's really not something that needs to be invested in. Now, I'm talking from ignorance, you all. You know, I just came on the committee, but
that's why we bring new people on the committee, so they'll ask questions like this. I think it's. I mean, I think the big schools use it a lot.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I think it's pretty. I can't speak for A&M, but I know at UT Austin it's pretty important. It's an important part of the suite. it's customizable. It's pretty flexible. I don't know either. It's like I don't know. I think it's a great question, and I asked that as a newbie myself coming under ApplyTexas a couple of years ago. Why don't more people use the scholarship app? Maybe someone knows, Cheryl or somebody.
Maybe it's an education piece too. I mean, people just don't know or understand it.
A&M College Station uses it and thoroughly. I mean, they really count on that. Okay, we, on the other hand, are a smaller institution and tried to just recently some of the things College Station does and tried to use them in our own mix and found it to be a little bit more cumbersome for a smaller institution to use it because there's so much programming even on your side, even though you're getting the information electronically. However, we are finding ways, and we intend to use it in the next cycle. We just said, okay, well, this time we're going to use both now. So I know College Station uses it a lot,
and they are delivered as separate apps. I mean, so for you, and part of the problem with communication in the past has been that often the people who are consuming the scholarship apps are not the same people they're not admissions people often, and so
that's right, because it's in the financial aid.
Right.
We come over both of those areas, so we mix them together. However, the other thing is that we're very knowledgeable on ApplyTexas for the application piece, but there's not a lot of knowledge about the financial aid piece. And I know I was talking to Tim the last time we were here saying, can we do this, can we do this? And we found some things that we could do that we were being told in other areas, not in this group, that we couldn't do. So that was a huge help. So I think as more and more people learn that, oh yeah, you can do that, that they'll be more likely to use it. Because it is a good thing to be able to say, fill it out online, and it comes along all together, and they don't have to fill out 14 different applications. I mean, there is a lot of merit to using it if you figure it out, how it can work into your system.
Is it additional pricing on top of what's paid for ApplyTexas?
No. Jose handles the pricing, but I don't think it has to do with whether you do a scholarship app or not.
And Jeannie, for the community colleges, one thing to keep in mind is that we usually have our monetary resources are smaller, and on our end there will be some cost associated with it. Programming, many of us don't carry an IT staff that programs for us. We have to outsource that on day to day, and so there are some cost from starting it because it didn't just appear in your system. And I think that's been some of the reason I don't think there's a single community college using it in the state. So there's 50 institutions right there that are passing at this point. And I don't think it's because they don't want to, but I just, where do we put our resources? And they said, well, the paper app's working, so we'll just keep doing it until, we can figure out a way to make this work.
Well, I get that. But like one of the things that came out of, it wasn't this year, but I think it was last year when we did the Birds of a Feather. Now we're a colleague, we're a data school. One of the things that came out of that was that since we were all state institutions, we're pretty advanced when it comes to the import piece with ApplyTexas and Datatel. So we had already done all the work for the code, and we gave that to other schools. So I guess my question is, what's the possibility of ApplyTexas doing some of that work where it's a pretty easy import for schools that don't have the IT capability?
I think that's going to be a pain because every school that has different IT programs, Datatel, PeopleSoft, imports are different. The way the data is handled is different. That would, at least, and I'm speaking for Tim, but I think that would be a lot of resource time on their part working with those vendors trying to figure that out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, some of the larger vendors are going that way, and that might be a place to lean on some of the vendors, some of the larger, the PeopleSoft and the Banners. I know that Illusion, which is now what Datatel was, has software, and they're building an import. They're working toward an automatic import of ApplyTexas apps into the Recruiter vendor product. That's not built yet, but they're working on that. They're working with us on that. So that may be a way to go too, if you've got a vendor product for your SIS or for your recruitment.
I don't want to belabor the point. I just think that's a sad situation from a resource standpoint. So
I have to expand a little bit on what Jeremy said about the community colleges probably not moving toward using this. Most of the scholarships that occur at the 2-year level are based on the performance of the student once they arrive on campus and start into their program. It's not based on financial need before being admitted to the school. So a lot of our scholarships and aid processes take place after they're admitted and they start into a program. So it just doesn't fit with the scholarship application.
Ray, you got to learn to not be so nice. You just got to jump in.
Just out of curiosity, what kinds of information is gained from a scholarship application that's not found elsewhere in the application or accompanying documents? Mike, I saw your head nodding how useful it is. Could you share why this would be important to you?
Well, it's also a numbers situation for us. The volume for us to manage, for instance, a paper scholarship application. This was done years ago, and it was a nightmare. This is fast, clean. It allows the financial aid office to evaluate large numbers of students applying for aid and get in. They do the kind of academic evaluation and start to sort them in an admission sort of way, in a descending order of merit. And then they subdivide those out into areas where there might be scholarships for particular majors or particular programs. And so it allows them, without that, we have found it to be very useful and very helpful so that we can turn more quickly, rapidly, to make admissions offers in the early spring before May 1. So,
is any of this need-based?
Some, very little. Most of it is purely merit, the vast majority of it.
It also allows, because of the custom questions capability within ApplyTexas, that you could have different questions that are answered for different scholarships. You can list all the different scholarships and gather information like that, and which ones they want to apply to in this.
That's what I think the biggest benefit is the data, because if you take the data from the ApplyTexas, mix it with your data from the FAFSA and your data from other information in your system, then it allows you to run data to make decisions based on, your institutional funds and your need-based. So I was finding that very difficult to do with paper applications because we'd have stacks and stacks, and I wouldn't know how to evaluate that. Typing them in was lengthy. The error rate, trying to get them into some kind of an organized system.
Well, and one thing we're not thinking of here, as far from an admissions standpoint, an enrollment standpoint, that's a lot of times handled in another office to many of us. And quite frankly, they're not in here, most of them. And so we're sitting here going, well, that's their problem to figure out. I'm just thinking about it from a staffing point of view. Am I going to do that for another office? They're not here. They're not seeing the benefit because they're not involved in the process. So those financial aid directors may be saying, I'm not doing it because I don't know anything about the product. I have no control over the product. I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just pointing out the obvious, that they're not involved in this at all.
That's a good point, Jeremy. There's opportunity at the ApplyTexas conference that we hold to have interaction on scholarship application and development with constituency. And so, but that also requires an invitation to some specific people to participate that we probably need to be better about inviting.
Well, one other idea is to do a webinar on it that we can post up to the web, that our financial aid directors can go out and see. Maybe some institutions that are using it, almost make it a little promo production of here's the product, here's what it looks like, a brief tour, and here's some institutions that are using it and what they got out of it.
Financial aid, they have a conference every year. Maybe we try to get on that agenda so you kind of have a captive audience. But, it's also an opportunity to share the information.
It would be interesting to know. I think those are all good ideas. It's interesting from my point of view. It would be interesting to know that because whether the use is by a minority is because of lack of resources on the receiving end to consume the data versus not knowing about it and not knowing where one could get help to find out whether one could use it versus just the tool itself is limited because it was built, for some of the larger schools and maybe it could be changed to or be more useful.
And if we were going to suggest that, I think it would be wise to let some financial aid directors be the presenters who are actually the experts in using it. I think they would be able to speak more eloquently and to the point to their peers at the meeting. But TAFSA, I'm sure, would be open to another session. And I'm certainly willing to talk to Chris Muir at our place to see if he would be willing to work with others who are using the scholarship application and to work up a presentation proposal, if that's agreeable.
That's a great idea because our school's help on task for this time. They're just now in planning stages, so I'm sure they would welcome a session on that. That's a great idea.
Okay.
I think TASFA was meeting this week already, but that's all right. I'm sure they'll have another one.
We'll catch them again. If any of you have colleagues, financial aid colleagues on your campus who would be willing to be in that presentation, let me know, and I'll connect them to Chris Muir.
Okay. If no more comments about that at this point, I'll move to the last one, which has to do with possible solutions on multiple accounts for a single individual. This is just not so much an update from me, but basically a chance for you all to talk about whether this is a problem and how we might go about it. At this point, it's pretty much open Wild West out there. People can do whatever they want. There's nothing that keeps anyone from creating another profile. Sometimes it's useful, but anyway, it's open discussion for you all what kind of problem that might cause for you. You could have multiple profiles using the same email address. I mean, the profiles are based on that profile ID you get back. And so I don't know why someone would want to create a lot of different profiles unless they are under the mistaken, unless they think they can apply, they need one for each application or something. But it would be doable, not trivial, but doable to look when someone gives us when someone creates a profile. We get a lot of information on the profile. Sometimes some people complain that it's not enough. We need to get more central information, and other people complain that it's too much. It takes them too long to start it, to create it. So I guess we're in the right spot probably because both sides are unhappy about it. But we could, once they try to create a profile, we could do some auditing and say, oh, you know what? We have someone of this same name, date of birth, and email, or same name, date of birth, whatever you decided, is with an already existing profile. Do you want, do you want to use that one? Sometimes we don't keep profiles around forever. So if someone waits, if someone goes to undergraduate school and then comes back as a grad student into ApplyTexas 5 years later, they may not find their profile anymore. And they may decide not to use it. Maybe we'd give them the offer to say, we don't. No, I want to create a new profile. Y'all have electronic IDs at your institutions, and I know the ways ours works is once you put in your name and date of birth, it may say, hey, I think I maybe found you. Are you one of these? And you can always say no, create me a new one, for whatever reason you've got. But currently there is no auditing at all. You want to create a new profile, you just click the link and create a new one. You're given your ID and you can use it or not.
My only concern, if you're saying is from this list, is one of them is then we're having to give out some personal identifiable information for them to pick from that list, are we not? I mean, we're having to give them at least enough so they can look to see which one's them.
We would give them the ID. We would have to give them. Yeah, we'd have to give them something about. We'd have to give them the ID, right? Which itself is probably not Cat 1 data. It's not a password. It's like the ID at UT is, the UTE ID is, it's not plastered all over the place, but it's not protected information. But the password is. And so, yeah, we would have to reveal something to them that we have someone a lot like you in our system, and that's revealing something about another person right there, and we would have to say, now what would happen would be it's not totally unsecure, because if they say, oh yeah, I think that ID I think is me, then they're going to get, maybe I forgot my password or whatever, a password reset's going to go to the email address linked to that account. And if that's you, if that's your email address, then it probably is you. If it's somebody else's email address, then it wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to get in. That make sense? I just don't know, and it's not trivial to do that. It would be a project, but it's done all the time, and it wouldn't be something that would take all of our resources for a whole cycle or something of development, to do that. It's just a matter of how important it is.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's something for the technology committee to look at and determine what information we want them to actually be able to see. I just have some FERPA concerns.
And data is ran against this record, right? Because Jose was talking yesterday that duplicate applications are created through this process because they have 10 different applications that they submit, with the same email or whatever identification they
To the
use.
same place?
Right.
From a different,
profiles in general.
So is that one of the problems? Is that Amarillo College will get 2 apps from the same person?
Right, and then they're counted
because they're allowed to do so because they have a different profile.
Right, because reports are
and why
submitted.
do they do that?
Because they got tired one day and decided to do it the next day and thought, I'll just create another one because I can't remember my password. But I know reports.
They already submitted one.
Creating
they haven't
profiles.
Submitted it, you won't get it.
Oh, yes. I mean, I didn't know that either, but Jose had shared with us that piece that, how come you have 110% enrollment? It's based on that information.
Yeah. Well,
based on that information.
And Tim, I will tell you, even with since we still have a personal app, I have students that go back to that app and keep filling it out until they get an answer from me.
Mm-hmm. Or they submit a physical application.
And they will do it within the same 24-hour time period.
Yes.
So they figured out a way to ping you again with another app.
Right. And it creates duplicates within our system also.
Yeah.
So I don't see why that would hurt if we have something that says.
And depending on why they're doing it, we probably would still want to allow them to create a new one if they wanted to, which if they're using it for this purpose, they could still do that. They could still say,
And we found that students tell us different things with each application that they submit. So,
oh, really?
Right.
Stuff.
Yes.
And I think a less serious issue than this, because we get the same thing where we'll get duplicate applications in our system, but sometimes a student will start an application, they won't finish it, they'll forget their login information, and they'll start a new one. And when we go into ApplyTexas to work those applications to try to contact those students and ask them why they haven't submitted, we realize, they did submit, but they're already in the system as well. So even keeping down the duplicates that haven't submitted within the profiles would be very helpful to us, though not as serious as once they've actually submitted.
Hey, Tim, one thing I would like us to consider, just to bridge that gap to get started, and you brought this up yesterday, how about as an initial step we say if their email address is the same, then there's a duplicate already in the system. And you can't create another account with the same email address. And that just gets us started, and it's not solving the problem completely, but that is a first initial step that we could deal with in this cycle before we move forward. So, actually, as a motion, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion on the floor for incorporation of a restriction in the ApplyTexas application process that would limit an individual application associated to one email address. Did I capture that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Gerald.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Just that, is the motion to add this to the discussion of priorities for this year? Okay.
Yeah, I would guess anything we vote on today that's going to change it would be added to the priority list to be decided.
So if you will, Jeremy, we'll call that a friendly amendment.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll accept that.
Yes. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll add that to the consideration for priorities for this year.
You know, one thing I wanted to add, Jeremy was talking about multiple applications. Now, you're not talking about in the same term, correct?
Yes, I am.
I think they are.
There's a control. I thought it was on the ApplyTexas end. Maybe it's on our end. But there's a control where you cannot apply to the same term to us.
Well, it is on your end, and what your system is doing is it's
okay.
rejecting anything that comes in if it falls in the same term. And on our own app, it warns the student, hey, you've already got an application setting out there. Now, the ApplyTexas is a little funnier because it's still going to give them the sense that they submitted it. Even if you're not accepting it, they still think they did. They still think they submitted it because it'll still say transmitted. If you go out there and look at Susie 12 times, she'll be in there all 12 times. But somewhere in your own system, you're just rejecting it and your people aren't seeing it.
You know, I don't think so, because literally we have received calls where they say ApplyTexas won't let them submit. So it's got to be on this end.
That's if they submit it within, I think it's the same username.
It
With
is.
the same
It is.
username, you can't do that. This is if you have
They're using it
multiple
different.
usernames
Gotcha.
and they try to apply to your institution 2 or 3 times, the
Gotcha.
system will let them do that.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's, when we spoke of profiles, we really should say a username. Each profile has its own username, and that's all it knows you as.
Anything else, Tim, for your report? Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is the subcommittee updates. I'd like to go through 10:30 and then take a break. So if we could start with our first subcommittee, that would be the high school counselor suite. And I apologize that I wasn't here yesterday for the subcommittee meetings. Personal apology. I'll take the opportunity to say I'm sorry I missed that one subcommittee meeting. So if we have nothing for these subcommittees, I don't know which subcommittee met yesterday. Let me start that way. Okay. Then is there any other subcommittees that have reports today other than combining app types? Then let's start with combining app types.
All right. And I'll let somebody from my committee put this in the form of a proposal here in a moment. But we met for about an hour and a half, and our basic idea was, could we figure out a way to easily make the application to where it will function for our dual credit students? Now, we didn't get into this too in depth. I mean, there's many items we could do as far as cleaning up the data, removing some items that doesn't pertain to them. But we just wanted to hit that initial step of, could we make this function so that it'll better guide them? And basically, there's 4 items we did that we thought would work. First is we want the system to determine, are they dual credit on its own? And there are 2 items that can tell us that. One, their term of enrollment, and their date of high school graduation. If their date of high school graduation is after their term of enrollment, then they're dual credit by any definition we use with the state. So the system can easily pick that up. And in order to do that, we need to be able to move the expected high school grad date to the profile, because it's usually asked in the application after the biographical information, and we need the system to determine that earlier, because the residency, am I a citizen, is asked in the profile. It's not asked in the application. It's not asked for the residency questions. And part C or D of, if you say, no, I'm not a U.S. citizen, is the 36-month rule, which does not apply to this cohort. They have not graduated high school, and that's one of the requirements for them to be able to use that notarized document. They have to be able to have already graduated high school. So we add that to the date, but prior to that question, so they would have term of enrollments created at the point they start the application. Then we would ask high school grad date prior to the am I a U.S. citizen question. so that the system would know behind the scenes not to include that as an option for them. In fact, I think we said we'd make that null behind the scenes, so it would not change a whole lot of the program. And basically, we're answering that question for them behind.
I think we changed it to not applicable, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. They would never see the text, but it's basically being answered for them because they won't understand what they should answer when it comes in. It also, once they get into the application, when it asks them why they are they there to earn a 2-year, 4-year, whatever, we would reduce their options down. There are only 2 items in that list that deal specifically, and this will help the reporting people so that the data is better. There are only 2 items that specifically address dual credit students, and one is for early college. The other one is for our college credit only, and one is for dual credit. Yeah, basis of admission.
Section 2, I think,
Okay.
in the educational info.
And so we want to reduce that down, all the other things that do not apply to that cohort out. And so that's basic. Oh, and the system would ID them dual credit, and that would be passed along in the EDI. We toyed with this because most of our systems can figure this out, but we wanted the receiving institution to understand why that decision was made, why they were not given the 36-month rule. So if there is something in the data that does not look correct, you can at least look back and say, oh, well, ApplyTexas attempted to, it said they were not, they were going to be dual credit, but according to my data, they shouldn't be, so there's something wrong here. So sort of a verifying check. And I think one of the other institutions actually asked in our last meeting that we pass that data along. And so it makes sense to us. Now, we had some other requests. We had one that was dealing specifically, and Cheryl's not here, but specifically dealing with international students, and we were not. We had decided early on when trying to combine app types that we would not address the international students as part of combining app types. We were thinking domestic and international as we clean these up. So we didn't just push it aside, but we thought that was something more for this bigger committee because it really didn't deal with the combining apps. And what was the second thing? Oh, and this is for a larger discussion. About 2 years ago, we discussed making the profile large and the apps small. So everything that was the same would show up in the profile. Everything that was different would show up in the apps. And I think that was sort of outside the scope of what we were trying to get done yesterday because that's a pretty hefty thing. You know, all of a sudden we're going to end up with these huge profiles for students who never apply. Just because you create a profile doesn't ever mean you did an application. And so we have some storage concerns. And so there's several things to deal with that the committee needs to discuss further down the line. But our intent for yesterday was to get to the dual credit part. So these applications would work for that group. So that is my report, and I move that it be considered in our list of priorities for today.
The motion on the floor is to include in the list of priorities the idea or the change of the logic in the application type to determine dual credit, characterization of an applicant, as you indicated. All those in favor say aye. We'll take a second. You don't need a second from a committee report, but that's okay.
Oh.
That's okay. We'll take one.
Then second.
Okay.
Were there any questions from people who were not on the committee? Because I didn't hear any. We tried to keep yesterday pretty simple as far as what we wanted something that could be done going into the next cycle, not something that had to be planned out for a long time.
Yeah. Will there be a written description of this proposed change that can be sent to everybody? I think really, I'd like to share this with staff on campus so that we clearly understand what we're about to do.
Yeah, in his June, the ApplyTexas team puts out here are the changes that are coming up in the system, and that would be included in on those.
Now, it's my understanding that a lot of this is, for lack of a better term, behind the scenes in terms of the programming, and that it will be self-determined.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the only EDI change, Tim, you can correct me, would really be are they dual credit or not?
Right. We're just going to add that to the EDI. We're making a couple of assumptions that we hope are true. One is that we're assuming that if they put a semester that they want to enroll that is before their graduation semester, that's reliable as being dual credit. And then, as you said, they're making the two changes. The one to limit the number of, on the two-year school app, I think is the only one that appears on the admission, what's your reason for admission, and we're limiting it to just two, because based on that. And the other thing is we're defaulting to not applicable the 36-month question and not showing it to them so that they can't put something else there. And you know, we're assuming that that's not going to have any negative effects down the line, because you're telling us that these people shouldn't be answering that. So
now the 36-month rule only shows up if you put no, I'm not a citizen.
Right.
And it does specifically say, have you graduated? So that's where the hang up is for many of the schools, is they can't say that they've graduated.
Right.
Because I'm still early high school. So, and that's why we went over and over it, and we couldn't find it at first.
Right.
So it only appears if they say, no, I'm not a resident, I'm not a U.S. citizen. So it doesn't apply, it doesn't show up anywhere else in the application.
Dynamically appears
Dynamically.
when you click no on I'm a citizen.
So I have a question. As students fill out these applications in such a way where their questions are going to change and they are in turn filling out a dual credit application, is there some kind of flag to let them know that? I mean, is there some kind of, because of your selection?
It's not going to say you're a dual credit student. It's directing them to the appropriate residency questions that they need to answer. We're trying to make the system intelligent on that end to say, okay, looks like you're a dual credit student.
And Megan, we discussed it yesterday, and this gets back to, would we confuse them if we start trying to say, hey, you're doing the dual credit application? We actually went back and forth with this for a little while, and it's such a minor change, at least at this point, that we thought it was less trouble than trying to back up and say, even if you tell them, hey, you're doing a dual credit, what are they going to change?
Well, and I guess I'm only asking because, and maybe it's just an Angelo State problem, but we do have students who have not yet graduated from high school and they're applying for, say, the spring term that's currently going on right now, but they're not applying for dual credit. So we do have students fill it out wrong. So when they do fill it out this way, and they submit the application with this new, they won't have then answered the real questions that we want them to answer. So I wonder, would we then ask them to go fill out a brand new application? Whereas right now, when we catch that error, we can just move it over because they did fill out everything we wanted.
Well, the only thing you're missing is the 36-month question.
Okay.
That's it.
And they're actually answering it wrong.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have 12,000 dual. So for us, majority of those, they're forced to do the 36 months question.
So nothing else on the application changes other than that one question is the only thing that kind of falls off and changes.
Not at this point, because we were actually, by even offering them that question, we were sending the false impression that if they do that, especially for institutions that don't discount tuition, we were sending the false impression that, hey, you fill this form out, you get to pay in-state tuition, or you get to pay a reduced tuition. So, I mean, there was a little bit of a misleading that we were doing to the students, and this will clear that up. And if they filled the app out wrong, that's going to have some cleanup somewhere anyway, as far as their term of enrollment or something.
Okay. Yeah, they do. They do, and a lot. Not a lot, but we have a handful or more probably 25 or more every term who fill out the wrong. Yeah. They say that their entry into ASU is going to be prior to their graduation date, and we have to fix that for them. But thank you for clarifying for me.
Yeah, out of the 25, how many are, then you have to reduce that number to the non-residents or non-U.S. citizens, and then your number is going to go down to go do and follow up.
Okay.
So.
Is the freshman app, just for clarity? We're going to have them fill out the freshman app for everyone?
It'll be freshman and 2-year. 2-year has a different app than the 4-year schools.
Okay. Gotcha.
Any other discussion on that topic for combining application types? And that's still an evolving piece. I think that there's still some goals that we have to even pass dual credit. So tackling one item at a time, moving forward on that piece. I received, thank you, Jose, the T-Rex subcommittee meeting minutes from Cheryl. I know that her subcommittee, or at least she's been apprising her subcommittee of her work back and forth with TEA, and I'll read that into the record for you right now. The T-Rex subcommittee report is that the subcommittee has not met since the December meeting. The T-Rex did have an updated release, they did have an update released in December. The committee agreed on the proposed T-Rex statute change. If you remember, that's a question of moving the language from recommended to required in terms of T-Rex transmission to post-secondary institutions from high schools. Did I get that correct?
Mm-hmm.
The subcommittee agreed upon the T-Rex statute change, and the coordinating board submitted the recommendations to the Senate Higher Education Committee. And I'll let Jose talk about that in a moment. Cheryl says she received no additional information regarding TACRO's discussion on homeschool transcripts, and that feedback from TEA regarding non-EOC assessments or non-end of course assessments on the transcript, that Kelly confirmed that the only scoring information that we can send on the high school transcript or the EOC are exit level assessments. If non-exit or EOC assessment information is required, as in the case for dual credit enrollment prior to EOC being taken, you will have to continue to request that information be provided from the student's record. It's a thick sentence. You need me to go over that again? Okay. Questions or comments on the T-Rex subcommittee report? All right, seeing none. Jose, would you mind talking a little bit about the coordinating board submission to the Senate Higher Education Committee?
Yes, we submitted the recommendations as recommendations from the committee. We haven't received any kind of feedback or have heard any type of discussion on anybody authoring the legislation. So at this point, we probably need to either work with other organizations to see if we can push this legislation to the front to get an author. Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much where we are right now. The status of that change, of that proposed change. The other thing with TEA and the assessment piece, I think what we need to do, the proposed changes addresses that. If it doesn't pass, I think what we need to do is just have a discussion with TEA and identify those pieces of information that are needed for dual credit purposes, so that we can at least have that discussion with TEA and automate the process instead of going back to the high schools and request that information every single time that you need that information. So I think that we need to have the discussion with TEA after the session and see. Just wait till the session ends to see if the proposed changes pass before we go that route. But if it doesn't pass, I think we do need to have the discussion with TEA.
On the subject of the diploma mills, TACRO President Oscar Rayner asked me if I would solicit the names of any volunteers from this committee that would like to work on that project with TACRO to come up with a recommendation to either approach the legislators. So if anybody would like to volunteer to be on the committee to look at the problem of diploma mills, please contact Oscar. I think everybody has his email, or they can find it in the TAC Road directory. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Any other subcommittee reports? Yes, Cheryl.
I'll just mention that on the testing, Jeff from U of H and Cheryl Rich and I have had some communications via email. And the reason we didn't meet as our subcommittee is that we're gathering data from other institutions and their interest in something like this, so that a bigger cohort could go forward to the testing agencies of what we would like. And I'm also searching the literature a little bit to see what other actions have occurred across other states. So we're working on getting stuff together for a white paper, as you suggested, Jose, but Jeff and I haven't started on the white paper. We just have a file that we're gathering. So if anybody has any other information, or our subcommittee, I'll be getting something out for us to start talking about working on the white paper. But that's all I have. We didn't really have any huge updates. So we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Cheryl. Seeing no other subcommittee reports at this time, and I would like to take a 10-minute break before we start the next conversation topic of discussing the current essays in the ApplyTexas application. So we will recess for 10 minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. The next item for our agenda this afternoon, or this morning, is the discussion of proposed changes to the application essays on the ApplyTexas application. Now, the conversation for that has started at the beginning of this year. This is our third meeting we've had. At the beginning of the first meeting of this cycle, we started this conversation, and we gained a lot of momentum in our second meeting. And over that period of time, we have had good conversation on the development of essay questions, plus comments from constituencies across the state. And the information that we have that Jose passed out is information about responses from constituencies, so you can see some of the vetting that's been done in the terms of the proposed questions for the essay changes, and some of the comments and responses that we're getting back from individuals within the state. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to look at that, then I would like for you to take a moment to look at that, and we can talk about these questions in total or individually based on this information, and we can choose whether or not we need to make any action based upon our conversation and discussion today. As a side note, the common application, that third-party independent organization that provides a common application nationally, just changed their essay questions this year. And so there was a lot of interest in terms of what the common application did to change their questions and whether or not we, as the ApplyTexas committee, were going to change our essays. Word on the street.
Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. If the committee does decide to change the questions, that's just text changes. That's not really.
Yeah, that's correct. Text changes should be fairly trivial. We have a number. If we don't need to change the number, we might look at we would need to investigate whether if you're asking for a different number of them, we'd have to look and see if there's any issues with size. But if you're just looking at changing the text, you also, I think, have some. It's customizable to a certain extent in the sense that you can choose which ones you want. But yeah, text changes are not should be trivial.
Ethan, has there been a decision on what these questions should be? Is that what?
No. This is completely open to our discussion. These are recommended changes to the application and essay questions. And this body needs to decide if we want to take those recommendations and change what we have or keep what we have.
Do we have the possible changes?
Yes, this sheet that Jose passed around,
Okay, we were.
if you look at
We
the
hadn't
top
looked at
in the shaded section of each of those pages, you'll see recommended questions. So, for example, on the front page, the first recommended essay question is: write about a time when you gave back to a community. What did you learn from that experience? Is giving back important? Why or why not for the freshman and transfer application? Does that everybody see that now? Okay.
I think this would be more directed to anybody who uses it. I don't know if any 2 years use it, but we don't. So I really had no direct experience or interaction with it, no opinion. It won't affect our students.
Well, and Ethan, I was just going to say, since it's such a small change, I think it's okay for the committee to say, yes, we'll change it. But between the schools that are using it, you'll just need to decide what the questions are going to be and give those to Tim, because Tim said as far as programming goes, it's very easy, very simple. And
are we just changing to, is the changing to these from what we have now, is that?
Yes, that's correct.
You would have to select from them, right? You would not choose them all.
Exactly. We would choose 3.
Right. And I guess one of the questions I had, and again, wasn't a part of this conversation, but is there a perceived or a stated problem that the current?
They haven't been looked at or changed since the beginning of the application, since 1997.
Okay. Are they not? Let me ask the question differently. Are they no longer serving their purpose?
I think that was the idea of just relooking at. They're serving their purpose, but it was just a way to update the current ones.
That's a good question, Dr. Heinze. I can respond anecdotally and personally from my institution that I've had a lot of commentary from high school counselors that I've interacted with about changes to the application's essays. Perhaps that was being spurred on because of the fact that the Common Application was changing theirs. And so that I don't necessarily know in terms of impetus from these different high school counselors. But it has been a lot of conversation that I've experienced this year with constituencies. We're an institution that uses the essays extensively, particularly in our admission review process. And so we find it to be valuable. But to me, it's not necessarily the question which is valuable, it's the quality in the content which is valuable.
Right.
And so I'm very flexible with those pieces. The one piece that I would try to champion in terms of, well, the essay number 3, the current essay question, the open-ended question about that allows students to talk about their life experiences, and any other challenges or obstacles which have impacted their life at this point, I find to be a very valuable question. And I'm not sure if these are attempts to separate some of those out into more specific types. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I would say that it's an important part of our process to have that if we have students participate in it. Mm-hmm.
What happens a lot in the essays, from what I can see, working 30 years with students, helping them review their essays, topic A, because it asks you to talk about someone that's been significant in your life, a lot of the students actually really want to answer what you've asked, which is they spent the essay telling you about someone that's been really important in their life and not really validating what that person has done to them, because you really want to see the student. It's like I tell them, is your grandfather applying to UT Austin or A&M? No. Okay, because now they really know your grandparent. And the topic B, the way it stands, because it's describe an issue, and for us, the border violence seems to be a topic of, or whatever, or poverty, or lack of medical access to medical care. And so they concentrate on a lot of what's being asked. And I don't think that, the reps want to see a book report on border violence or on, issues that plague, but kind of their perspective, or how do they see that playing into their life, or what are their plans to work on that or eradicate something or be a solution. And I think that that's probably maybe in reading those essays, that's where they run into a problem, that the students actually don't delve that much into painting up a portrait of themselves or actually capturing themselves on that paper. And I guess this is where it came from. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I would think that that was, you know, the thought behind this possible change. And so maybe some of these questions would lend themselves a little bit for the student to really to be able to portray themselves to the people making that decision in their life.
Thank you, Pilar. I think that's a very good explanation, specifically from the perspective of the high school counselor, and I really appreciate you really bringing that to light. And I would concur, will echo and support everything you said about the fact that the portraiture of the student is an important part of that process. And so I would recommend that there's always at least a question of the three that allows the student to do that.
And C allows that because it's like, okay, tell me about your setback or tell me about yourself. And it lends itself for the student to really be able to talk about themselves. Whereas the other two, you know, unless they're guided or I don't know, or maybe if they don't want to change it, to make some kind of notation to those questions that the importance is on the relevance of what that issue or what that person, how it really impacted them, transformed them, or defined them in some kind of way.
Okay, while we don't use it, I do have one comment about it since I've worked at a university that did use them before. The plus to changing those questions from time to time is on the part of the reviewer, because after you've read the same essay for 10 years, you quit reading them. You start skimming them instead of looking at what the student's actually trying to tell you. So from a refreshing standpoint, to change it seems, just for me, it seems changing those questions up from time to time may help in your review process as much for you as it does for them. And it's just a thought that came to my mind when
It's not just for you, Jeremy.
And I'd like to make a recommendation to the committee that we take the consideration of changing the essays as an item of vote, and that we refine these questions, which there's more than three, down to three, and we'll do that in subcommittee to write those out. Does that sound like a good strategic approach to this question? If we're all in agreement, and I'll ask everyone, but specifically institutions who use the application essays, that it is time to change the questions and that we will put our confidence in a subcommittee to do so. And that can be a subcommittee of every institution that uses the essays. Then let's move forward with that. If that's appropriate for your consideration as a committee, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. And a second. Thank you, Pilar. Okay, all those in favor of... Oh, okay, Pilar.
Sorry.
Thank you for your enthusiasm. I'll take another second. Thank you, Rito. All right, all those in favor of changing the essays this year, and we'll do the revision to the essays, and this will be just a text change. The process will stay the same technologically. Then we'll do so through subcommittee referral, and you just let me know if you would like to be on that subcommittee, and we'll move forward from there. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll move forward with that.
I think I'm already listed on the questions anyway.
And we can have those, and we can have that subcommittee conversation prior to the conference this summer so that we'll be able to unveil those then. How's that sound? If not sooner. Okay? Let me make my note real quick.
Oh, yeah.
the conference. We need to.
All right, now we would like to move to the item number 7 on our agenda, vote on the priority recommendation of changes for the application for the 2015-2016 cycle. And we'll move through this process of prioritization and put those priorities together for Tim and his staff. The first one is the subcommittee proposed changes, if any. Let me look and see what we had. The first one was the consideration of the dual credit logic and building a dual credit logic process. I think that's all we had in the subcommittee report. And then the the application essay questions, but that one is pretty good. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the subcommittee proposed changes. I'm going to try to review all of the proposed change pieces, and then we'll put them in priority order. The proposed changes from discussion items, we had an item that came up in our discussion today. Well, that was the consideration of the early college high school question, which we voted not to do, so that's not a problem. Add an auditable disclaimer on scholarship modules, family and financial information section. Can you remind me what that one is?
Yes, that was from our last meeting in December. You remember we passed out the suggestion there. Let me just go back over it very briefly. The module instructions would be modified to contain the following statement. If you do not wish to be considered for need-based scholarships, parenthesis, scholarships that are awarded based on a combination of financial need and academic merit, close parenthesis, you do not need to complete questions 3 through 17 in this section. And then a disclaimer right under that said, I have read the disclaimer and acknowledge that I am not applying for need-based scholarships, and you must answer to go forward. And the reason that this was brought forward to the subcommittee was that there were students and families who were objecting to being required to fill out information about their income when they had they knew they were not going to be considered for need-based scholarships and didn't want to disclose that kind of information to anyone. Is that a fair?
That is a very good representation.
Okay, so that was we talked about this in December, and the committee voted in support of that, putting that into the application.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Heinze. The language changed from primary to preferred phone number, and I believe that was just the change in the language. Is that correct?
I think so.
Adding a yes or no question for first-generation college student designation. We addressed the cleaning software conversation in Tim's report and the apartment number on an address, as well as the essay prompts. We also discussed, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, limiting an application to only be valid with one email address. I think that was the last item that I had from our discussion today.
I'm sorry, could I ask a question on the yes or no question for the first generation college student? Is that going to be like in the profile part of the application, or where are we talking about that being?
That's a very good question. Well, it could go in the profile, and it also could be, bless you, it also could be a part of the logic if the student completes a section on parents' education level. But that might be assumptive on my part that we could pull that out of that. And it may need to be a direct question.
Okay, and the reason I ask that is because a couple of years ago, this committee was faced with the problem of a lot of attribute-type questions that really didn't deal with admissions, and I would like to raise that same issue on this question. What is the purpose of this question? Is it for some entity someplace to gather that data for some sort of reporting purpose, because I don't know that that question deals with whether or not we're going to admit the student or not. And there are a lot of other questions that the institutions have to report to various other places that this kind of question fits into. So I'm not so sure this is appropriate place on the admissions application to ask this question. I'm afraid that we'll open the door again for all those other types of things where they say, oh, this student is, everybody has to go through admissions, so let's ask that question there.
That's pretty much where we're at. We do not use it from an admissions standpoint, but because we're like the gatekeeper when the application and the data comes in-house, so everyone's asking us for this information, and it is a reporting requirement also. I do believe that in our financial aid department, they also pull this data in, but again, everyone wants us to be the keeper.
That's what happens when you're good at your work.
The question surrounding parents' level of education and whether or not a student is a first-generation college attender or first-generation American, for that matter, is stuff that in the independent sector is very important to what in our considerations. And the reason is that it sets up a completely different scenario, at least in our minds, as we are reviewing the applicant to see whether that child has had an advance. And you're making some assumptions on here that you point out, Dr. Logan, may not be legitimate, but you're making some assumptions about the type of environment that student has grown up in. And lots of us practice what we call contextual admission. That is, we look at the student within his or her own context. And so something like this is going to be very useful to us. And if it's not an imposition to the rest, we would hope that it could be somewhere that we could find it fairly easily.
Could be added as a dynamic question. The two-year apps, and that's a good point. The two-year app, the two-year schools, that is a lot of our students. So it would be an extra step for our students, but if there's some way that we could do it on the U.S. freshman app, a possibility if private schools, private institutions would like it.
Is there not a similar question in the demographic information?
The parents education.
Okay.
And that's actually what we use when we are asked across campus for their first generation status. We just use those questions that already exist, and we have logic behind the scenes that gives us that. So I'm not sure what we'll do if we now ask this additional question and maybe there's conflicting information from the student that doesn't support this.
We do also. Right now, that's an optional question, I believe. And I think we talked about it either last meeting or the meeting before, making it a required answer, if I remember right.
Is there a reason why we didn't do it dynamic?
I think because it was already there.
And that's exactly my point. I think we're going to start back to the way it used to be. Well, you got that question, let's add this one here, and then let's add this one, and it.
But Daryl, the only thing is, from TCU's point of view, that is a legitimate admission question. So I'm not disagreeing. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how to make it where it doesn't impact everybody, but for those who are not using it. And it seems to me like that would be a great opportunity for those schools who are to have that as a dynamic question, which you can create yourself and collect the data.
I agree completely on that point.
Well, I think, speaking for us, I think some of these issues, and I think it goes back to some earlier, several years ago, legislation about subjective things that we are, as institutions, are encouraged to consider if we, especially in review cases. House, was it 588 back in the day, and others? So, I mean, I think the socioeconomic disadvantaged issue, first generation, those are things that in review, close call situations, some of us do consider and take a look at has this student overcome a great deal of adversity to get to the point where they are? And if we can help that individual student, then we'll err on the side of admission rather than asking them to come as a transfer. So I think we would, not that it's a huge deal, but it is for a fraction, a portion, if you will, of our review cases. Issues like that are used, so we would use it as well.
Is this for both apps, 2-year and 4-year, or is this 4-year only? Because for admission standards to a 2-year school, it means nothing. It's just we're open admission, so it doesn't. It's just another question that they've got to answer.
And my question would be, where would we put it? Right after the father's educational background, mother's educational background, then get them to kind of restate, yes, I am a first-generation student, after they've kind of already said that?
I think that's a good place to put it. I would echo from another 4-year public what was said about the use of this in admission and admission review. And it is important for us in terms of making consideration as a component of a holistic review process. And so we would want to have this information if it was that clearly spelled out, or if we wrote it in verse and through the logic of mother and father's educational level. And so is there value in self-identification as a first-generation college student? Perhaps. There are first-generation college student programs that some of us have on our campuses that we put in place for these students. And it may be important for those students to recognize that that is a term that applies to them, and that they could take advantage of these programs and services now that they recognize the fact that they're a first-generation college student.
It might also be useful to point out that there's going to be myriad definitions for what constitutes first generation. Did your parents go to a community college for 1 year? Is that first generation or not? A college tenure. Just like there are many definitions for what constitutes a legacy in the process. Does that include cousins, uncles, aunts, dogs, cats? Is it so? If the question that you posed is a follow-up to the parents' level of education, that might be left open to the student's interpretation. I mean, if the parents didn't go to college, that one's easy. But if they went to 1 year of college or did not finish a bachelor's degree, does that constitute still a first generation?
Exactly. And I know that the conversation still exists about whether or not is that an exclusive term or definition, one or the other, for first generation college students. I think Texas state legislature determined some, but
which argues for making it a dynamic result of how the student filled out the parent's educational background. Would that not address that issue? If they indicated, then the application would be able to, based on a uniform definition that all public universities agree to, then the legislature, I suppose, then that would be applied across to all students equally and fairly, and our data should all be consistent with each other, which would be very helpful, I would think.
So that would be not asking a direct question, that would be basing it on the data of how they responded to the education.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then both of those would have to be required questions, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So right now, do they have the option, and I'm not very familiar with it, do they have the option of saying I don't have a father or a mother? I mean, if we make them both required, what do they do if they is there a don't know?
Yeah.
Actually, it's not. They could skip the question.
Skip the question, but
it's currently not required.
It's not required
if
at all.
you're not going to have it as a separate question, and you're not going to add it as a custom question for your institution, but you want the data, then we could make these two questions required so that everyone would have that data, and then you could do what you want with it. The other option, obviously, is to have a custom question where you can word it exactly how you want them to understand the question. But that would be up to you.
I'll look back through my notes, and I didn't see it that I had written anything down, but I remember that discussion now because we had talked about a drill down on if they said the father had went to school, then it would drill down into what level.
Well, it currently has a pull down that says no high school, some high school diploma or GED, some college, associate's degree, bachelor's or 4-year degree, graduate or professional degree, or unknown. So, and I'm assuming it's the same for both fathers and mothers.
Well, and honestly, when it goes back to the definition, if you left it that way, the institution pulling in that data can use that for their own definition.
Right.
But I do believe it really does need to be a mandatory answer. Because a lot of times the data that we import, it's not answered.
Can you require it, though? I guess is another question. There are other questions on the app that are not required that we would all like to have information on.
And thus the slippery slope that Daryl is discussing.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, I'll add a little more to it just from a two-year college standpoint is that there is probably more than half of our students, when they're filling this application out, have absolutely no clue where mom and dad, how much they have. So you ask them what their background is. What does your mom do? Well, she's a nurse. Well, you got to go to school for that. So there's guessing that goes in. Did she get her BSN? Did she get her LVN? Did she get her RN? You know, there's different levels there. And I'm not saying that, Ray, you and I are going to cross out very much, but you know, that's where it stands on the two-year college level. It's not good data on our level at all because they're guessing.
The only good data that we have is what we actually verify. We don't trust them even when they put their name down that's their name. Because most of the time, Tommy is Thomas. So it's...
That's a real good point to remember that it's all self-reported here. So,
Well, as we look at prioritization of these recommendations for changes, perhaps we can look at this one as a lower priority because it probably still has some consideration, yes, in terms of how to approach this question. So, Dr. Brace, if we could go through these in terms of what you say are extensive, perhaps moderate or low in terms of the technological application and development, so that we can help with the prioritization of these items.
well, we'll do some gimmies first. So the language change, you do want the language change from primary to preferred on phone number. Is that correct? Okay, so we'll give that to you for free.
All right.
And then the essay prompts is as long as they don't, if they're simple text changes to already existing essays, then that's also trivial. If we end up with a different number, or some are going to be required, or you want us to change how that's handled, that's also trivial, and so we definitely can do that one. We talked about the apartment number. That's simply going to be the removal of apartment number field from the emergency contact, and that's also. We can take things out pretty easily.
And a small little
and maybe
note.
some text,
Right.
that we might say, something about whatever. If there's any, I don't know if there's any text on the second line, but if there is, we can add something about apartment number there. For example, apartment number, or if there's apartment number, put it here.
Can I think of a physical address or whatever we call that now? On the physical address, I think we have a little in parentheses, street address, no P.O. box. I mean, we're kind of doing that in some areas, or leading them to what we're wanting.
Yeah, we have a little on the app. There's the label of the field. There's the field, and then we have a little thing over the side where we can say text. Like, I don't know why this is on there, but evidently this was a problem. But on the permanent address, it says street address. There's a field, and then over on the side it says address only. Do not need to re-enter your name. So there must have been some confusion, on that at some point, and then it's obviously next to county, it says Texas residents only. So you're telling them you're not going to find the county probably if you're not in Texas, so don't need to worry about that. State or possession for U.S. addresses only. And again, on street address line 2, we could put something like, for example, apartment number or whatever.
So we are moving forward with separating the apartment number, the address number. Is that what you're saying with that one?
Actually,
He's saying
combining.
taking it all.
Combine,
No apartment, okay.
Yeah, the current, it's not on the physical address right now, but on the emergency contact, there used to be an apartment field that evidently was on the app. It was taken off of all the addresses except emergency contact. So really, there was some discussion of maybe putting it back because some people don't know what to do. They may not put the apartment number on the second one, but I think that what we decided to do was to take it, complete the removal of it, so that there is a address line 1, address line 2.
Gotcha.
It's a consistency issue, basically.
Yeah. The cleaning doesn't have a specific spot for apartment, so we'd have to finagle that if you wanted it back. Okay, so.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
on that? Okay, so does that mean that now we should probably use the cleaning software also on the emergency contact address as well?
That's going to be for y'all, for Rita and Cheryl and our team to talk about. But that would be. I'm sure they would want your input on that. On what we have. We have a permanent address, a physical address, and an emergency contact address. And so there are 3. Looks like those 3 addresses are part of the. Actually, I'm looking at the app and not the profile. I should be looking at the profile, but they're probably all on there. But yeah, that would be. I would leave that. That would be their input on that. And if you have input on that, I would say give it to them. But my guess would be that we would do it on all addresses that were on the contact. That's a good question. Thank you. And let's see. So if we get now down to things that take more work, we're looking at the dual credit. And that's not trivial, but it's not going to take all our resources from everything else. I will add that the way we're kind of looking at it from a technical standpoint is, from the team, is that the address cleaning is a major endeavor. And y'all remember the T-Rex installation of the automatic request for transcript, for high school transcript. Those two are big projects and would be a major project each for one cycle. And so we can get both of those done this time. That's quite a bit of our time. It's not to say there's no time left for anything else. I don't know that in all the other things, which would be, if we say we're doing the address cleaning, and it's not on here, but we are doing the TRS, at least we're going to hopefully piloting that this spring. The other things, the auditable disclaimer and the dual credit, I don't know whether you want, is there anything else I'm missing on here? Are the two, sorry?
Limiting apps with email, based on their email address.
Oh, right, limiting, and I thought that got referred to a committee. I don't know what they're going to ask for, so it's difficult for me to say. I can't say at this point what unless you have a clear idea of what you want as a first step. But like if you wanted to say, as a group today, you wanted to say when they fill out when they try to fill out a profile and they put in their email address, if we've already got one of that same email address, then we do something as a first step. We could take a look at that this year. Otherwise, I can't comment on how long it would take to implement.
I think that's what we were talking, for the interim. while we decide if we want to go lock it down even further, if you will, that we would do a verification off the email. And if the email is the same as one that's already in the system, it says, oh, you've already got an app in the system.
Profile.
Or profile in the system, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
And then we're going to email that information, reset password to your account that's on file.
Okay. So let me, before I get to kind of my final statement, which is to ask you to prioritize something, my understanding is we will do essay prompts based on the fact that they're text. We will take the apartment number off the emergency address. We will install address cleaning software. We will move forward on the T-Rex implementation of automatic requests for transcript. Well, there's some implementation questions of that going forward, but as a technical team, that's on our plate. And we're changing the language from primary to preferred phone number. At this point, adding a yes/no question has not been requested of us. Is that correct for this term? So what we have left is dual credit, adding the auditable disclaimer, and the email verification. So I would ask you all to prioritize those, not saying we cannot get to them all, but just if it came to where we couldn't because of resources on these other things, would you prioritize those three for me for this cycle?
Well, I guess
I've got four. The address cleaning, verification process via email, dual credit, and the auditable.
Address cleaning is a
if you want, I'm assuming address cleaning is pretty much not negotiable. You want that this time.
It's not negotiable.
If Jose's nodding his head, then that's a yes. We've already talked about that. The coordinating board also wants that. But so if we take that one off, what I'm asking for is the prioritization of the other three in case resources. But given that those others will get done, that we'll commit to those for sure.
And of the other three, are they all moderate in terms?
Let me see. Yeah, they're all. They seem about the same to me. They're not trivial, but they would not be, if they would not take all our resources if that was the only thing you wanted done this year. The dual credit, we've already talked about what that entails, and that would entail adding something to the field, making a change in the EDI, the logic behind the scenes to make some small changes in flow based on it. Email verification is, we'll want someone to help us through exactly what you want there, but I'm assuming probably what you want would be something like a check of the database for an email, and if we have one, then asking them if they want to reactivate or go to that one. And we probably would ask, as we move forward on that, we probably will come back and want someone to work with us on that, on options for implementation, so a small group or a subcommittee. I would assume that also is doable, not trivial, doesn't involve a change to the EDI or the app itself actually, but involves doing some programming that doesn't exist right now. And it would involve a back and forth between us and the student at a point at which we're not doing that right now. The other one, what's the other one? The auditable disclaimer. Also, it's kind of like the dual credit in a way. It's going to be asking a question, and then based on that question, changing some logic in the flow of the application. And then I guess one follow-up with that is, would you want to know, would we need to change the EDI? Do you want us to set a switch and then tell you that they did that? Okay, so then it's a lot like the dual credit then. I wouldn't say it's a backbreaker, but it's not something you do in just a few days. So,
well, from a completely selfish point of view, I'd rather see, as far as those three prioritized, almost in the order I've got them written down, which is dual credit, then the scholarship module, and then as a last thought, the error checking, because we just kind of tacked that on today. And I was thinking dual credit because it's such a large population. It affects, quite a few and almost all of us.
Thank you for that recommendation, Jeremy. Any other comments or questions or recommendations for prioritization? If there are none, then let's go with those prioritization items in that order. Dual credit logic, the audible disclaimer for scholarship modules, and then limiting the application creation to one email per profile. And that we will keep those low impact items we discussed. Language change for primary to preferred telephone number, essay prompt for the language or the text for the essay prompts, and the emergency contact apartment number on the address field for the incorporation of the apartment number in the address field. And then those extensive items which will require significant programming for implementation, the address changes or the address cleaning, and then the T-Rex automatic request for transmission of transcript.
And Tim, I would be happy to work with, if you get to the email prompt, I'll be happy to work with the team to kind of figure that flow out.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other business for the committee?
If I could say, there was one question about what was it? Michael and I were talking about the getting the information that was going to be delivered at the conference, and we were concerned that it might not get to us in time. What were we talking about? You asked. Did that have to do with this?
Right. I mean, we were talking about some of the decisions. I guess it was the changing the screen, the one about apartment. Would that be done in time for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do we have everything we need about the auditable disclaimer? Do I have everything I need as far as, is that clear as far as the steps to be taken? That are,
I believe so.
Are y'all clear with that?
Yeah,
Okay. So that's fine.
Dr. Heinz's report on that, I think, is pretty extensive.
Okay, so thanks. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
The next, well, if there's no other new business.
I just had a question as a newcomer. How does one propose a change to the application?
As a committee member, you can.
Okay. I mean, I was just, just something from our school we were thinking about as far as the payment screen. When they click, I'm sending a check, I know we just recently added, you can attach a note if they click on a major. Is there a way we can attach a note to a payment type? So I'm sending a fee waiver. Can we sort of send them a little line or two saying, you have to go to this website in order to get additional information, that type of thing. I'm sending a check. Okay, you can mail your check to this address. Just sort of being able to add some text to once somebody clicks a payment option.
I'm going to let Dr. Brace answer that question.
Are you talking about something that would be standard text or customizable by university?
I'm thinking about university. I mean, yeah.
And that would be something that doesn't exist already, right? At the payment.
Right, because right now you just click it and you submit it, and I guess it sort of tells you what you clicked. But especially for us for fee waivers, it'll be good for us to be able to say you still have to fill out additional information. You clicking this button doesn't mean you got a fee waiver. So I think that would be helpful if we could just, along with when they click that button, if we could give them a little more information, that would be great. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, I think that would probably help some other institutions as well.
Does it need to be, well, it is institution specific. Does it need to be institution specific in the dynamic questions for institutions, or does it need to be generalized or universalized on the application?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways you could do it. As far as the technology goes, obviously you can do a custom question. If you ask for a fee waiver, please do this. If you wanted to install it and make it customizable, it would probably be part of the administrative suite, that there would be, the administrator would go in, and there would be a little box like there already is for some things.
For other things, but not for this. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and you would have that, and then that we would need to then install that in the app. When someone applies to you, it would go and grab that and put it there. And that's that's all doable. I would say that's probably about the same size a project as the dual credit and the other ones that we've got.
So I'm not saying that had something that had to be done right now, but I think that would be something in the future. It would be great to add.
Obviously, currently it could be handled via custom question at your institution, but if it's useful, I mean, that's the balance of custom questions versus putting it in the app. It depends on if it's useful to a lot of people, then it probably they shouldn't have to be doing it via custom questions if everybody wants it, but.
I think it's a great question. I would say today, as we have prioritized these changes, that it needs to be a consideration for a customer question, but definitely something for consideration for the next cycle.
Gotcha. And that's all I was trying to do, was trying to get it out there for next cycle.
Yes. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Any other new business or new items for consideration? I would make this announcement that we will have a ApplyTexas conference in the week of June 17th. We believe that is the correct date. If anybody has information to the contrary, please let us know. It's usually the day prior. We have TACRO has reserved the Pickle Center for the conference. And you would think that we would have good connections with TACRO to know this explicitly, but we think it's the week of the 17th. Now, part of that process is to be the unveiling of the next application, and another part of that process is to be a good opportunity to interface with our constituencies on a statewide basis and have their ongoing interaction and feedback, and then to talk about any technological pieces that take place. And we will be talking about that in just a moment after we adjourn this meeting. But I would like for you to take in consideration not only to participate in the conference as members of the committee, but for the fact that we may need to have a called committee meeting in June. That will be after the legislative session has concluded, probably. And that if there are any legislative mandates that we need to address in the application, just to be available for that. So you may have already be planning on attending the ApplyTexas committee, which I recommend, conference, which I recommend everybody can. But just to think in your mind that if there's anything that comes out of the legislation session that we need to address and to put into the current application for this upcoming cycle, then we may need to have a called meeting to do so. And to move forward on that. So I just wanted to leave you with that, not as a threat, but as a hopeful expectation of reunion down the road.
Stay in the state.
Stay in the state. Be available. Yes.
No, it's sometime that week.
Sometime that week.
The week of the 17th.
Tuesday, Wednesday, something like
I think Speedy sometime is Tuesday, Wednesday is what it has typically been. So we could do Tuesday, Wednesday, hold Thursday if you think we need it. So, yes.
Am I out of order to say something about Speedy?
Of course not.
The management of the Speedy server is being taken over by the NSC. They are moving forward on it. They may already, certainly by June, they may already have taken responsibility for it or be well on their way toward that. So I'm certainly in conversation with them. They came down and we had a meeting this week. I had a meeting. Our UT registrars and admissions and me representing ApplyTexas had a meeting with them, and so there'll be some interesting updates about that. But we're excited about that, and if anybody has any questions specifically about that, they could talk to me about it. I know some. we should find out a lot at the Speedy Conference.
Hey, Tim, I do have one question. Like right now, when we do our EDI download, that's all downloaded at one time. Is that going to have to change when we do our downloads? Will, won't it?
How do you do your EDI download?
When our EDI download, it actually it pulls our Speedy transcripts and our ApplyTexas data all in one download. So we would have to program that because it's coming from two different servers to put as two separate downloads, would we not?
No, it'll still be. You're talking about the applications and the transcripts will all still be going. They'll still be coming through. They'll still be probably coming to your same spot. I don't know exactly. They're just the Speedy server itself is going to live somewhere else and be maintained by different people. But they've promised to maintain the same services, and so I don't know, other than your server needing to know about a new address from which you will receive all Speedy documents at the point of the changeover. I don't know that there's going to be any change for you. I haven't heard of anything like that.
All right. Any other announcements for the committee? This has been the most efficient ApplyTexas cycle of this committee ever, I think, in the history of the committee. 3 meetings over the course of the year. So congratulations to you as a committee for your efficacy. And it's been a pleasure to serve as your chair for this term. So thank you so much. And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.